Hi, Stefan.
Hi, hi to all. Hello.
How are you doing this evening?
Very, very good, very good. Perfect.
Excellent.
The
I'm going
sun
to
is
hire up my volume just
got
a little
really.
bit.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can. I can hear
That's
you.
super, yeah.
So, where are you joining us from, Stefan?
I'm joining from Germany. As you can see, I'm in the home office. So you see my my library behind me. So it's yeah, a little bit less colors, or maybe other colors, but not in letter, but more in
This
books.
is also my home office. There's clothes everywhere, always,
Yeah.
and lots of color, of
Really,
course.
really shows. I mean, it really shows. I think our respective work environment, because obviously you work, in the styling coaching, and I am, as you all know, working as a with a side activity to my main activity, which is the consulting, because I'm in finance consulting, and I am working on diversity coaching, sustainability, and all the people-centric topics aside of my work. So this is why you seek some literature behind.
Yeah, and actually, Stefan, that starts us off on a really great topic because I think already people can tell a lot about who we are based on what's going on in the
Exactly.
background. And it's all visual based. And that's kind of what we're talking about here today. What we are communicating through what we wear, how it affects us and our performance, and what people are perceiving from how we choose to present ourselves in the world. So that kind of gets us started on a nice topic. Um, do you want to tell us how you got into the area of diversity and how style has impacted your work and what you do?
Oh, for sure, yes. And really, it all started with my interest for clothing. And this isn't really new. I mean, I was already interested in clothing a number of years ago when we were children or teenagers, my sister and myself. We used to take a look at these French fashion magazines, and that really started my interest in it. I mean, or it revealed it. And then for many years, I was looking at how people dress, I would say mainly women. And then I developed this sense of that I like what typically women wear, the variety, the pattern, the colors, and the different pieces, skirts, trousers, long, short, whatever. And so that got it started. And after a while, I think it was about now more than 10 years ago by now, I was like, hmm, I like it so much. Why would I be only a spectator? Wouldn't I become an actor? And that really started a sequence of events where I first started to wear myself these pieces. And I must say, 10 years ago, I think it's fair to say the world was not yet looking as it is now. And I think that is the bridge to the inclusion and diversity. Because 10 years ago, it was very unusual. And I remember the looks, people were looking at somebody like me much more in a way like, what is that, etc. And then now, as time has changed, I realized I wouldn't say it has become much more common, but I would say it is less of a surprise, or it is much more of a, all right, perceived as an expression of somebody. And I think that is the bridge to the diversity that I realized maybe when 1.5 years ago, not much more than two in any case, where I thought actually there's more to only wearing skirts or some heels or some colors. There's an expression of the style for sure, but there's an expression of how the world is changing, not only in the private environment, but also at work. And that is the expression of really a higher inclusion and diversity in the work environment.
Yeah, and I can totally see that change as well. Although I'm not in a corporate environment on a regular basis, I see that diversity is being valued much more these days. And the companies who are welcoming that are making more progress than those who are rejecting it. So I think the world is opening up, like you say, to people's individuality. There's a lot of people out there, especially clients who I work with, who want to dress a certain way, but they're fearful of change. They're fearful of what people might say. They're fearful of not fitting in. What would you say to that? Have you experienced that? Have you experienced some pushback? And what did you do, Stephane?
Yes, and I would like to place it more in a global context, because I think it's not only about me wearing some heels at work. I think it's more of a general approach, in the sense, I think also in whatever a woman or a man or decides to wear at work, there is the question of how is it going to be perceived. Let's remain for a minute in something which we would think in this circle here may be very normal. For instance, you wearing very bright colors, and I must say I love them, the violet, the purple, the red, and the bright green. But the question is, remain with you as a woman wearing a nice suit or a costume, in these colors, depending on the environment or the type of companies where you are, would you find a lot of other women wearing those bright colors, or would you find rather people wearing the dark blue, the gray, and then maximum those kind of pencil skirts, etc. And by the way, same for me, as a male, if we're saying, in an environment where I am, what kind of patterns will I find on a man? I mean, I think we would even not be talking about any skirts or whatever, but staying with a suit or with the jeans, what would be the kind of the frame and the pattern? And in many cases, depending on how the companies are, we may find some rather conservative or some more progressive frameworks. I think by now, especially taking from, I don't want to make it Germany-centric, because I'm so glad we have people from many countries, but I think the kind of the jeans look and the polo is a super usual one, at least for casual Friday, if not more. But I think this is where things are changing, because even, and before we touch base on more evolutive dress styles, I think even if those kind of, I would say, more usual circles, things are changing. And I must say, I see it now, after changing two or three times a company, how rapidly now things are evolving. I think about 5 or 6 years, or even maybe more years ago, that the tie was really, among the males, a symbol of power, right? A symbol of authority. And I think it's fair to say, after we have had Elon Musk, and we've had Mark Zuckerberg, and we've had, and probably even Steve Jobs decades ago, who started with the dark pullover, they expressed their symbol of authority through a very individual style. And I think, everybody remembers, it's Zuckerberg with a t-shirt and Steve Jobs with a pullover. But I think they initiated a super important change, because they're really, proving we can be super successful and super respected as a top executive and leader of this world by not wearing a tie. And this is where I think the gap is opening between some more traditional areas, and I do not want to nominate anybody, not to harm anybody, and those more progressive that really now show the change.
And Stephane, did you ever get to a point where you held back, or you rejected your want or need to dress how you wanted to dress, and you reverted back to the suit and tie or whatever was expected of you? Did you ever do that? And if so, how did it affect you and your performance and your interactions?
I think the degree of confidence is very related to what we wear. And here again, I mean, I think it's very related to what a woman would wear depending on if it's a meeting with colleagues, if it's a client presentation, if it's a business review, if it's a casual Friday, if it's an after work event. So let's take those different frames and saying, now men, women, and all genders, it has some impacts on how we feel, of course. I think also there are some differences if we take just a topic, which is, the length of the skirts. I mean, it's just something that we could talk probably for hours. What's the right length from a skirt? And here we do not want to open norms. But of course, there is, because we want to overcome norms and prejudices, but there is a certain, I think, framework that probably needs to be, I want to say, studied, understood, in order to see what is, the kind of the circle I am, and if I like to be among the more progressive people, to which degree can I expand the boundaries while still staying integrated in the circle. In other words, being, an innovator, but not pushing it that much that I start to be, excluded from the circle. And this is where I think fashion and diversity relate, because if we talk about an inclusive circle, you have people around different places on the circle, but the inclusion means that nobody should be out of the circle. So of course you can be super provocative by saying you will come in I don't know, in a festival outfit to a business review or a client presentation. You can do that. The question is that really so far? Is that still something that you could say is my personal style, or is it still a place where you say, well, I'm pushing it too much? So I think there's no black and white there, and probably there's pink and green in the middle. But I think now it becomes very individual for the person and for the environment, I mean the company or the organization, to think, how do we relate and how do we make sure that one fits into the other?
Yeah, I really like what you said there about that. I think it's very much about understanding company culture, what's expected, and there is going to be somewhat of a norm already established there. But does that mean you have to lose yourself completely? And I think that was the case in the past, where you left your own personal identity at home. You went to work and you were consumed by the culture of the company. And I think that's where things are changing now. I think there is a transition and a happy medium between respecting company culture while honoring your own identity. And it's that sweet spot there that I think where everybody wins, everybody benefits from that place. Not pushing it, like you said, going in a bikini or something to a meeting, that's, I think, maybe one step too far. But there is a place for feeling at home in your clothes, like it's a part of you, a part of your identity, while still respecting company culture. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it is evolving over place and over time. It is different among places in a given point in time, in the sense that it reflects the company framework. And I think a certain company can also evolve over time. So it's almost two-dimensional. If I take the company where I was working previously, I think it's fair to say I was one of the leaders to make the culture of clothing and the relation to respectability evolve. And most probably that's the hardest thing to do, because the environment perceives how a certain person is changing, and automatically it raises the question. I mean, it's glass roof, ceilings, etc. Maybe we touch base about that afterwards. So changing in a given environment is certainly difficult, because it raises a lot of questions. Now, by standing to it and by overcoming, I think by opening to dialogue, opening to critical dialogue, then we can start to make things evolve. Of course, as we said before, there's within a certain boundary. It's the question, how far can you push innovation? I think clothing between, let's take the example of, a skirt on a man is, I think, in this respect, is comparable to any kind of innovation of any kind of product. Suppose, any company would have brought a smartphone about 50 years ago or 100 years ago. It would have been just no success because the infrastructure wasn't there. Now, if we make this parallel here and we say, now we bring the heels for the man in a given environment, the question is, how do we do it? So that's what I mean with the evolution of a certain organization over time. Now, if we change the organization, then it starts to open other opportunities because first of all, we present ourselves in a given setup in our new organization. So we change from one to the other new to the new one, and the new one only knows us as we come, which is very, very different because for us, it's a new chance to set the scene. It also means, you know, when we want to enter your organization, also here, we need to see how do we sell ourselves, you know, and here it can be us selling ourselves as an employee of the company. It can be you as a coach for a company. It can be anybody as a consultant for a company. It can be as a supplier. So any kind of business relation. We have a chance to set the scene because now we present ourselves with the new ourselves when we change the company. And then we have now the difference between organizations at a given point in time, which is the other axis I talk about. And here I think there are many differences. I must say I have seen now at the same point in times different kind of organizations in the different diversity speeches or events that I lead. And I really must say, at a certain point in time, not all organizations are on the same speed. Some are really much more evolved than some other ones. So you can find some that are still, I would say, learning it, discovering it. There you can find some that are already extremely evolved, and there's everything. Now it's a question of what is the understanding of the definition of diversity from the organization. I don't say company because it can be, you know, non-profit, it can be whoever, you know, let's call it organization. So if they have an understanding of their own inclusion and diversity, which is already very, very progressive, then it opens the door to, of course, a clothing style which has much more diversity in itself and much more possibilities. Now, when we come in a company which is, I would say, a little bit more behind on the diversity journey, then we come back to what we said before, where it's a question, okay, how can we lead the journey forward?
And Stephane, you mentioned before in your previous organization that you were a leader and you led that change. Do you think that it's possible we have people listening at many different levels in an organization, maybe some who are new, just in the door, some who are very established. Does this change have to come from a certain level? Because I think there might be some very junior people coming into an organization wanting to make this change, but maybe feel like they can't because they don't have that authority, they haven't earned that right, for want of a better word. Where does this start for somebody who wants to make a change in their style in the work environment?
And I would say it's a strategic approach and it's a risk approach. It's a strategic approach because diversity typically is something from the top. So it's a kind of a top-down approach. It's a tone from the top. It's a living commitments with integrity. So this really is something determined by leaders. When leaders show the change, then they create the so-called safe space. And then, because they are the model, people look at leaders, what is the behavior of leaders? What is their language? What is, any kind of different role model that they play. So they can initiate the spark, and then they can realize that pretty soon the behavior, the clothing, the style, etc. is taken over by a broader mass. Now, the change can also be initiated, I would say, bottom up. And that's the much more risky approach, because then we create the space, which is at the beginning not necessarily safe. So it's basically the responsibility bottom up to insafe'n the space. I would say that that's certainly an approach which I have been willing to take in the past. I think, yes, there is an amount of risk. It makes it interesting. It makes it challenging, because yes, we can fail, of course. There is no risk, no failure risk, of course. But on the other hand, we can really make an impact in the sense that we realize if we feel strong enough, if we are bold, but as we said, also, making sure we stay in the frame, we can drive a change, we can initiate it, and then we can see that it's replicated by people who say, Well, this colleague, even if it is not, my superior or 3 degrees upwards, is a kind of a role model I could identify with. So in other words, a peer-to-peer relation can also initiate the change. And here, this is where I think it makes it really exciting, because we can realize, when we have no authority, who is taking over a certain change.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there about risk. Anything that we do that's slightly outside of the norm, there's a risk that comes with it. And we can make a calculated risk and kind of weigh things up. And I have experience in that myself. I went for an interview last year, and it was for an organization that traditionally would have expected me to wear some kind of a suit, whether it's a skirt suit or trouser suit. One, I didn't have that in my wardrobe because I felt at the time it wasn't me. And two, I thought, if I go out and buy something just for this interview, am I sacrificing some part of my identity? Am I giving that up? Am I portraying myself exactly how I want to be perceived? And so I went against the norm, which was a risk. This is what we're talking about here, this calculated risk. Did I go in what I would consider a respectful outfit that honored the culture of the organization? Yes. What I chose to go for was a very simple top, skirt, and heels combination. For me, it felt more comfortable. I felt more myself in it. And, when you feel yourself, you perform better. When I went into the interview, I felt really confident. I knew I had taken a little bit of a risk in what I was wearing. Did it pay off? Yes, I got the job, which in time I didn't take, but that was my own decision. But it just goes to show that we can begin to push the boundaries maybe in small ways, in this calculated risk kind of a way. We can weigh up the options, and it can be rewarded. But I think maybe we have to kind of really assess that at a very individual level, because obviously it could have gone another way. So that's the thing that we have to analyze. What would you say to people who are experiencing, this block, that they want to kind of challenge their own personal style, they want to develop it, they want to step into their own identity, but they're just afraid to do it? What would you say?
It's I would say, determine your level of confidence, determine the amount of risk that you're willing to take, and determine how you feel best in, how you really feel like your authentic self. The thing is that, especially in these, in these interviews, or when you're going on a client or to be as a company, nobody will tell you, because by now the diversity and inclusion regulations actually increase the limitation that a company, an organization, whoever has to really give this direct feedback, because it's so-called discrimination. So in other words, if I would be your client, Sarah, I could not be in a position probably to tell you I would not take Sarah because she came with a skirt and I thought it was too short. I think probably in any kind of organization, if I come with my heels in an interview, probably nobody would tell me, or nobody has ever told me, we didn't take you because you wore heels. Now, the thing is, even if, because it's discrimination, so it's prohibited, it shouldn't be done, that doesn't mean that it effectively does not happen. And that's the so-called glass roof ceiling, because we don't know what we don't know until we know it, right? So in other words, people don't tell us, but it's up to us, I think, to feel, to develop these antennas, about what is the perception of other people on me. So A, feel yourself. B, develop your risk you're willing to take. And C, get your antennas for your reaction of the environment. And I think it's there are some things that you can that can actually study. How do people take a look at you? Typically, when you greet somebody, you look eye to eye, but you can realize, if somebody is having, the eyes are, going from north to south and east to west, and then on a repeatedly basis, you can maybe understand that there is, a certain degree of surprise that people are kind of analyzing you. You can realize, oh, they're out of their, I don't want to say a comfort zone, but maybe out of their habits. So that's the kind of antenna that people should have, I think.
I think that's great advice, and it's not something that anybody can ever force you into. There's a lot of people who are going to be, just dress how you want and forget about everybody else. I think what you've said is great advice, that you have to consider your own level of confidence. You have to consider the risk and the possible consequences that may come with that risk, and are you willing to take that? I think they're great things to think about. You're somebody who has taken that risk. How would you say it has paid off? Are you glad you did it? I'm sure you've come up against some pushback throughout your journey. How do you feel now that you are in a place where you have developed your personal style, you're very comfortable in it? What would you say to people who are maybe at the beginning of their journey? Is it worth it for you?
I think it worth. Yes, it is. It is worth. I think it's important to understand it's a journey, and also we make our own progress in this journey. So in other words, when we begin being ourselves through our own presentation, through our styling, maybe we won't hit the nail right at the beginning because, and I think your best place to know it, we need to find our right colors. We need to find, our styles, the pieces that we wear, anything floral, any pattern, any type of clothes, etc., etc. So will we feel right immediately at start? I don't know. Maybe if we are lucky, maybe if we take a style coach like you, then we could accelerate the change or accelerate the right moment where we find ourselves. But I think, so it's important. Yes, it's going to be a journey for us also. Then if I look back, I would say, yes, I have had some pushbacks. I've had some hefty pushbacks, I think. And here also you can really never know, has it been exaggerated? Has it been a true one? I think I remember the so-called Day of the Socks, where I think it was years ago, where I wore, it was really at the beginning where I started to change my wardrobe. And I remember that day where it was a customer event, and then I had some, just some transparent socks, on a dark blue suit and some flat shoes. So I would say, from my perspective, nothing to shout about. But actually enough that somebody noticed it and gave me some quite negative feedback at that time. And I think it's a number of years ago. So I don't want to imagine how it would have been if I would have shown up at that day in a skirt, even in a super decent one. So what I want to say is, yes, let's be conscious. Whenever we drive innovation, then the environment is a bit lagging behind us. So we need to know there's going to be some pushback. Now, the other question is, do we sometimes even get a chance to, at all, how we call it, step out of the closet? I would say sometimes, and I must say it's something I've realized, somebody pushes the door before we can open them. I think it's a bit of a sad thing, but it happens. We need to know it. We can make an association with other situations where just imagine the topics we bring to the table when we are invited to anybody. And I think that there was a super reel also done by somebody that I love here on Instagram, which is called Avalino Diversity. And she brings the example, oh, by the way, Sarah, I just pick up Sarah, we are going to be invited on Sunday at the Joneses. Please, can you, give us a break with your, with your diversity topics? Can you please give us a break with your veganism? And can you please put decent clothes on? So in other words, that's the thing. Somebody has pushed the door against you before you can open it. So how do you deal with that? There, I think it's a question of how strong is the relation, and how do you have really an eye-to-eye relation with the other person, where you say, okay, well, I'm not yet there, so it's like, oh, no questions asked. Of course, no, of course, no. Then you're almost, well, you're putting yourself even further, deeper in the closet than you want it to be. The other question is, do you say, you feel safe, you feel strong on that day, and you say, well, you know what? No, on that day, I want to talk about the topic and I want to dress the way I want, because I feel that it is me, and I feel it is important for other people to listen. Now, I'm not going there, to do a missionary act, but I want to, make a status, make a stick in the ground saying, well, this is me, and then you can bring it in a more positive way, maybe saying, isn't it worth to open, to this kind of subject? So there also, it's almost like a regulator that you want to say, how much do you want to push it? Do you want to be the real type of missionary person? There, it's a question. You can face a lot of pushback. Or do you want to bring it, gradually, in a nice way, in a gentle way? And my take is, the more positive we bring innovative topics, being diversity, being sustainability, being whatever, the more positive we bring it, the more we give us a chance that people accept it and embark on our journey.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, maybe we need to give people the benefit of the doubt when we feel that fear. Maybe we're not giving people the benefit that they could be open to this topic, but maybe it needs to be approached with in a gentle way, not forcing it. I think, fear is a huge thing for people. Even if they're changing their style a little bit, or wearing colors that are just outside their comfort zone, or wearing a completely different style of clothing, fear can be debilitating. And I think, I always say to people that there will be people who talk, and we don't have the control to, we don't have that control over what people think, over what people do, over what they say. We only have the control over how we react to this situation. And that goes for anything, not just style and how we dress. And so making that distinction between that level of fear where we can't control. Those people who are going to talk will talk. Mm-hmm. And we can't do much about that, but we can control how we react to that situation. Stephane, I'm really enjoying this conversation. How can people get in touch with you if they'd like to know more about you, or invite you to talk in their organization or something like that? How would people reach you?
Through Instagram at best. I think you all know my account, and then I'm very open to DMs, so to direct messages. I answer them all, unless there are things that are for me not acceptable, but I think this is things we're not talking about here. I cannot promise I answer them right in the next quarter of an hour, because as I said, I'm working, but I really enjoy at night, during the evening, to have those chats or discussions. So feel free to reach. And then, I'm also reachable on LinkedIn. I try to post different topics on LinkedIn versus Instagram. I think it's the same for you also. By the way, you're also on YouTube, and I love your channel, Sarah. I think what you're posting also is really something that is worth for people taking the time to look at. I know Instagram can be very much speedy. In other words, we want to take a look at the things, and when we post things that take a little bit of time, I think it's worth really to take a step back, have a good tea, and then watch several posts from you, and then I think the more we watch, the more we see this inspiration and the round story between what you bring, which is really here also how to win, how to gain this confidence. I think you really bring it to the point, you know, that the right styling brings us the performance, because we feel well, and when we feel well, we just perform better. We don't think about, am I dressed the right way? Is my makeup the right one? We just kind of develop some to-go methods almost. So if you have this wonderful purple, violet or pinkish shirt, and okay, that's one I always look good in it because it fits, with my tie. You got the right color, etc. So that's like that's like almost your winning outfit. So when you come to a critical situation, that's the one I want to wear, even if I've worn it 4 days in the last 2 weeks. You're not going to go to any fast fashion. You're not going to buy the next thing. You say, that's one, I'm a winner when I wear it. I think super important to determine that one.
Thank you very much for saying that, Stephane. And while we're still here, I invite in questions as well. We're open to questions, so please type them into the chat there if you have any. But on that subject, that's exactly right, Stephane, what you're saying about, I do have these go-to items that are almost like my uniform, that I know, look good, suit me, and make me feel a certain way. They make me perform better. If I was standing here in my workout clothes, I know I wouldn't be as articulate maybe as I am right now because I'm dressed, in a certain way. So it really does affect how we perform as well. And if people want to get to a place where they have this go-to uniform that they feel great in, that they feel themselves in, when the time is, when it's needed, maybe it's an interview, maybe it's a presentation, whatever it might be, that you're needed to perform at your best. Having that go-to uniform is so important. How do you get there? You know what colors suit you, first of all. Something like this, if you're on camera, it's so important. That's when I do color consultations with people. Knowing what works for your body shape just as it is, not when you're 5 kilos lighter or 5 kilos heavier or which way you're going right now.
Right now.
Because this is the body you have right now. And then, finding that identity in your style, that when you don't have a chance to talk sometimes, that your clothes, your style is doing the talking for you. And, saying, hey, I'm approachable. Hey, I'm professional. Hey, I'm confident. I know what I'm doing here. Getting that uniform that you can just take out and know it works. That's a wonderful thing.
It's the right thing, and I think there is a good reason why, when you describe it so crisp, why I think you received the award from the network, Ireland Wicklow, and I'm super glad for you, and I want to place it here in this discussion because to the audience here, it's really, I think it's no coincidence. I think that with the way you describe, styling is super crisp, is super practicable. I think these are things we can really replicate for ourselves, and that's what I think is so important in anything related to diversity, to styling. There is a lot of scalability. In other words, if whatever works for you can be transposed in what is my dimension of styling, of diversity, and what is what can I take over and adapt it to my own style, to my behavior. So I think that's the beauty of listening to people who are professional, because you come with a structured approach. So you basically bring up the thing that maybe we have in a little bit unformalized way within ourselves, but we can't really bring it to the point. Now, when we come to somebody like you, you have a real approach, and then you lead us to basically determine ourselves and determine to maximize our performance level.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning the award. I'm very proud of that, especially because it's recognizing my work in individuality, diversity, sustainability, which is also very important. And, as you say, it's a structured approach. It's step by step. It's not jumping in the deep end and a complete makeover where you don't recognize yourself in the mirror. That's not my style. I like to kind of take people through step by step in a very structured approach, and you know, my online course does that. So thank you for mentioning that. Stephane, is there anything else you'd like to mention on the subject today?
I think it's a, you know, as always, super enjoyable to talk with you, super insightful. I hope that everybody in the audience has enjoyed it as much as I did. You know, I think we're both, you know, super approachable so you know, just reach in. Very happy to you know, to expand and to further develop ideas. We're super happy also to see many people, or many of our common followers, you know, so it's not possible to read everybody, but just saying, you know, saying hi to anybody and sending lots of love and thanks for being here. It's extremely motivating and extremely warm-hearting to see you all there. So it's yeah, always a pleasure. And I would say let's go on. Let's associate styling, diversity, inclusion, and bring it to you know, to a point where we really make an impact for us and for our environment.
And I completely echo your sentiments there, Stephane. I really enjoy your content. For anybody who is interested in the topic of styling, diversity, please do follow Stephane as well, and you will learn a lot there. Stephane, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I really enjoyed that conversation, and I'm sure we could talk for much longer as well. But maybe we'll organize another time and we'll let you go and enjoy your evening, and I hope everybody has a good evening as well. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll keep in touch.
We'll keep all in touch. Lots of greetings.
Take care,
to everybody. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye bye.